All right, welcome to the show. This is the Weekly Jargon. I am Jose Rodriguez.
Abel Perez. I'm not used to going second.
Rohi Zachariah.
Well, just a little rearrangement today, but there's nothing new. We're still the three Jargoneers, and we're jargoning it up this week.
Yeah.
Abel, take us away on what we have going today.
Well, today's the Thanksgiving Eve, and everybody's prepping. Yesterday, I work at the Fig Garden Village, and leaving there at 4:30. Not a good idea. It took me about an hour to get home. My wife was shopping, getting some last-minute groceries off of Herndon and 99, and it took her about an hour and a half to get home because she took the 99 and got stuck. Right, so the traffic is in full effect. People are traveling. People are, doing all their last-minute shopping, and we're getting ready for Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
we're ready to intake all those carbs and calories. So.
That's why we always have a rule. I tell her after Thanksgiving we don't go to Fresno. It's not. It's a little too crazy for me. So,
I decided to clean out the dryer vent on Monday. I wanted to try to get that squared away. You get those. You get that information that if you don't clean it out, potential fire, right? So what do? I climb up in my attic, and as I'm moving around, I see the ventilation pipes. So then I have this device that'll get through there, and I try to, drill it so that I can clean it out. Well, it turns out that I broke that pipe. So then I go to Lowe's. And Monday, I walked into Lowe's, and it was packed. Okay? And then I go, okay, wow. I mean, again, you start thinking, well, there's a lot of people that are off this week.
Kids are during the day?
During the day, yes. This was like at 9 in the morning, 9:30 in the morning. So, I didn't realize that, kids are on, just because, I just didn't dawn on me. You have routine that kids are out of school, most likely teachers are out of school, and there are other jobs where people are out of school for this week to celebrate the Thanksgiving holiday. So what does that do? That creates a lot of people with the interest of wanting to go get those deals, the Black Friday, which I think don't start necessarily on Black Friday. They probably start a week or two before.
Yeah.
The stores are getting prepped up, and they're getting their aisles ready. They're getting all the end caps ready for when you go out and check out. There's additional stuff that you may need, and this is where they push a lot of these sales. So anyways, long story short, I go in there, I fix it, but it dawned on me that, again, this week is going to be a busy week, kind of to your point, that you may get stuck in traffic. You may be out shopping with a lot of other people, and it's competitive, right? You're looking for those deals. And typically, this is when, I think we spoke on this before, when you think you're getting a deal, but in reality, it's probably a markdown on the original price that was already,
that's why it's nice, especially if you do online shopping. A lot of the programs have like price tracking, so you can actually see throughout the the last couple of months, especially that rise and fall of some of these prices on your items. And I remember last year I was looking for a Christmas gift, and it was on sale, and then you track it back, and it's like it was the same price it was like 4 months ago. They just rose it right before, and that's typical of most retail sales is like they'll rise it a little bit before these major sales.
Yeah.
This way when it actually goes on sale, maybe a few dollars cheaper, but it's typically about the same price you were paying the whole time, But, there's a lot of strategy to that. I know you guys aren't in retail, but, for retail chains, the other reason why they would have these sales is because it's the end of the year. They want to close out, especially in California. You get taxed on inventory, so the more that you don't have on hand, the better. And then, obviously, next year you're going to have potentially new items,
new models.
New models, exactly. So you don't want to get stuck with that. So you put it on sale, get rid of it, and maybe make a little less, but just to clear out your shelves.
Yeah, it's a good point, but it's also a good reminder that this Thanksgiving week, and it's really turned into a week, right? Even though it's just the one Thursday, but it's not a federal holiday. Black Friday is not a federal holiday, but most people have it off, and most people are going to turn into retail consumers there. But just side note for the viewers out there, what does this week represent for you? We all have our own traditions, and obviously the retail side of it has become a really big tradition for most people. But I would challenge people to want to know, has that tradition is it still worth that tradition of going Black Friday shopping? You know, getting up early, fighting the crowds, fighting the lines, you know, and you know, to save a few bucks. Has online shopping made it, you know, just kind of like a process that's obsolete? For me, it has. You know, I'd rather just go online, get it a couple days later. Not, you know, I don't get high off of the thrill of fighting people in the stores, right? How about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of sad. I mean, I remember the camping out and all that kind of stuff, and it's sad that you see that now it's like, you know, the people that go at that, you know, 5, 6 in the morning, and there's just nobody, you know,
Yeah.
like it's just online, or it's not even Black Friday, like you said, it's a week before now, and
Yeah.
people are kind of maybe already spent out even by the time we get there, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, you know, and I'm not trying to turn this around, but speaking of sales, you know, people that are ready, especially at the end of the year, they're looking, especially businesses are looking to try to buy certain assets to try to shelter some of that tax revenue. And, you know, recently Gavin Newsom made a report regarding Teslas. So I think the California has a rebate for certain electric vehicles, but Gavin Newsom is making an exception that not the Teslas. And again, this is in a rebuttal against, you know, what Elon Musk and the government of efficiency, it was the
Doge.
DOJA, the Department of Government Efficiency. Again, what's trying to do is make cutbacks in certain areas, which, you know, I think they bring a valid point. But now if you're looking to buy a Tesla, that could potentially dent your pocket when it comes to that rebate and the liability. What do you think of that? I mean, is that just in order to, I mean,
Yeah, I don't
singling
know.
out a specific
Yeah,
manufacturer and or a
Well,
company?
I think when the owner of the manufacturer is, you know, on stage with Donald Trump, and you know, it's you can't help but to say, wow, this is, you know, politics at its finest, and the power of it, right? The power that, you know, each state actually has. You know, we sometimes feel like, you know, we sometimes get too caught up in the presidential race and saying, you know, whoever's the president dictates my life today. And we forget about these governors, these state governors, right? And local officials like Jose Rodriguez on city council, right? These rules and rebates that affect us on a day to day, you know, certainly they're a lot more tangible than some of the federal laws that get trickled in, right? And so I think we got to be conscious of that. But it is, you know, politics at its finest, and it just goes to show the amount of power that, you know, electeds have in these type of situations. Yeah. You know, and yeah. If you're in Madera, actually, I've been looking into the green landscaping rebate that the city of Madera has, right? And I can only imagine, you know, Jose saying, well, you can do that, but you can't use this landscaper to do it, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how that would be, right? If we said, I know Jose's not the mayor, right, or the sole, you know, decider on that, but if it was, if that was the case, you know, how would we feel about that? Wait, well, why not that individual? Oh, we don't like him.
But we do have provisions on certain people that, no. we're always encouraging local, but I mean, obviously you can, like you said, that's a very good example. You can use whomever can provide you that, right?
Yeah.
I think there are some qualifications for it. I think up to $3,000, but you know, and you have to just take a picture of before and after and what you took out as far as square footage, right?
But what's the point? What's the purpose behind that? Is it to go green? Are we trying to encourage people to go green, or are we trying to encourage people to, you know, purchase a certain product, right?
Well,
and
yeah.
so when going back to the state and with Tesla, it's like, are we trying to steer people away and hurt and isolate a business, or do we really care about the, you know, the ozone, and are we really trying to protect our planet? You know?
I think the state has very aggressive policies to try to make California a green state, right? And by doing so, it's put certain mandates and it's put certain dates of when they'd like to see all vehicles to be green, or at least not dependent on fossil fuel. And I think that's been extended to 2035, which is not too far away from here. But I mean, you could imagine the incentives that they're going to want to run to try to get you to do that, right? So instead of buying that diesel or gasoline engine, then consider electrifying, right? Or
Yeah.
a different source of
Yeah.
energy that's not something that's related to natural resource, right? Like a hydrogen. I mean, I think all in all, you still have to extract natural resources, but this whole thing with electrification, California again has these aggressive policies, and sometimes you have to wonder if we have all the infrastructure in place to be able to get that. So it may not cost you, but now the studies that are coming about, getting an electric vehicle versus paying the gas, which is cheaper? Well, there was a point where the tipping scale obviously favored the electric vehicle, but it's starting to come down to where now it may be where gasoline may almost be there if it goes any lower.
Yeah, I mean, so to kind of go to your grass debate here, I think my issue with a lot of what you're doing is not realizing that our city parks and schools are some of the biggest green spaces that we have in the city, but yet 0% of them have fake grass. I mean, they're all running real grass, watering it, and it's not even being used for the public. It's more of it's a private entity. So I would just, me as a consumer, if you're really trying to push me into hey, we should go green, I'd like to see the city or the schools be the leader in that and say like, look, this is what we're doing, and it should save money. I mean, in the long run. I mean, I know I talked to my neighbor about this because they did their green, the fake grass stuff, and yeah, you're cutting water, you're cutting no more gardening service, no more fuel for the garden. It's all should be good, but yet none of our parks are even in. I know it would be expensive. It'd probably be millions probably to outfit all these things, but there's not even one step of progress to say.
There are some schools here. Madera Unified has done several of their schools with their added certain smart sprinklers, and with that, there may be a section there. And again,
But we're building a new school. Why aren't you building it with fake grass?
There may be a section there where an industrial and/or commercial may be different than residential, as far as.
Well, I don't need a rebate. I just need it to be done.
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
I mean,
so.
obviously we all want to go there, right? But I
Yeah.
mean, you can't do it overnight. Again, these aggressive policies that are being mandated by the state. At one point, Madera had that same mandate to conserve 20% of the water usage, right? So there was some mandates,
Sure.
and a lot of that it hurt you at the end of the month when you had to look at your bill, because there was a base rate and then there was somewhat of a tier. And I don't want to say the word tier because people may misconstrue that and say, well, that's illegal. And there's been challenges
Sure.
with that here and there in certain cities. But I mean, the consumption of water, obviously, if we have a finite amount of water, because we have to draw our water, we're not getting any surface water. We're actually we're drawing water from our wells, but we're also competing with the surrounding environment, right? And if you're asking residents to put meters on their household, there's a cost for drawing up that water coming up there. So you have to pass that cost up there. And there's no exception also with schools and industrial parks and what have you. So they too have to have meters in them so that they can be charged appropriately, so that they're paying their fair share.
Well, I mean, my point is that we're trying to pass this multi-billion-dollar bond to upgrade schools because of they need to fix things in their financials. But if I go by any of the schools here in town, they have huge green spaces, and again, it's real grass. It's being watered, like you said. It's being well taken care of, and we're not pushing this green mandate of saying, well, hey, they need to start maybe every year taking out chunks of that real grass and putting fake grass. Or when these new schools are being built, it seems like we're not being forced, like me as the homeowner that says, hey, you only get 1,000 square feet. We're saying, hey, build out this huge, beautiful lawn that's going to be watered and mowed and everything. But yet the state's saying, go green, don't use water, let your grass die in the summer.
But I think I would say that that would be extremely costly, to convert those schools. And I think the overall costs in the long run would supersede what we have in place right now. And so, talking about taxpayer dollars, especially in the schools, it's like, do I want those dollars being spent so the kids could have fake grass, right? So we can call ourselves green, right? For me as a taxpayer, it's not that important. I'd actually much rather have my kid play on real grass and reap the oxygen benefits or whatever benefits occur having real grass and real trees and and of course apply those funds elsewhere. But I think that would be an extremely costly project.
And it may be. I mean, you see it in football fields when you add artificial turf and you add all these things. They're not very cheap. But there's also the city's general plan regarding parks and green space. I'm sure the school has a master plan that they have with allocating some green space for every school that they build. Obviously, you don't want to be the school that's all artificial. I mean, there may be some benefits of having that green grass out there. Now, what grass you utilize, you may have something that's very water intensive or very drought tolerant. So, I'm assuming that schools are looking into more drought tolerant type of strains of grass, like a Bermuda or something that can certainly still provide you that green grass, and you don't have to water it year round, right? You water it normally when it's most needed, which is during the summertime. But I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I appreciate the questions, Rohi. You always have these really detailed questions that go to the heart of what we do at the city. But
Through the heart.
yeah, through the heart. You don't mess around.
Well, we went green. We're talking about grass. What's your favorite grass-fed item that's going to be on the dinner table tomorrow?
Well, I don't know that turkeys are grass-fed, but I mean, there may be some out there. Your most popular butterball would probably be there, but you'll have ham is never really it's always part of the same. When you talk Thanksgiving, you're always talking about ham and you're talking about turkey.
So do you guys each go like traditional with your meals, or do you throw some twist in there?
Growing up in a Mexican family, there was always tortillas added to the mix. And I mean, people may not see that, but for us, it was like a normal, we're just having a dinner, make sure there's tortillas next to it. No different than anyone that likes having pita or bread.
Yeah.
They like to have that on the side. Thanksgiving probably is the exception. You rarely see it in different families, right? But for us, it was a staple in our diet. So we used to have that. Now, tamales, maybe?
Yeah,
I don't know.
tamales will be there. Yeah, some
Yeah.
fried chicken. So my grandparents' house, they always had fried chicken, tamales, and chili verde, in addition to the traditional items. And so this year for my in-laws, we do more of a traditional dinner, and everybody's saying, what are they going to bring? And I go, I'm going to make some chili verde. So I'm making chili verde. I'm gonna go Mexican, just because I'm not gonna go to my grandparents' house this year, so it's kind of a little touch of home, I guess you could say, right? But it actually goes really good with mashed potatoes and all that kind of stuff.
There you
so
go.
It works
What about
out.
you, Rohi? What's
It's
on
mostly
the dinner?
traditional. I mean, we obviously have our ethnic food we throw in there, little side dishes, but it's traditional.
Yeah.
We've been having the same Thanksgiving dinner for my entire
So
life.
what would be a little twist? What would be a little twist that you guys add?
Like hummus and
Yeah.
some of the like tabbouleh and stuff, which is more traditional for us. But
Yeah.
you still got the
Throw in some
turkey
spices and
and the yams and that kind of stuff. So
The hummus, for example, that's become more of a staple deal for us now. Hummus has become something that has just acquired a taste in our family. And for those of you that don't know what hummus is, that's your chickpeas, right? Just
chickpeas. I like chickpeas whole too.
And they make it's like your bean dip, but here you're doing it with garbanzo beans, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a staple food in the Mediterranean diet. And when you have it with pita or chips, man, and they always add flavors. If you like garlic, or if you like artichoke, jalapeno, whatever, it's all there. It's all the flavors. But it's become a very popular dish, especially in my household. And it's not just something that you add a twist to, but it's actually a good dip. I enjoy it as much as I can. Yeah. Anything else that you're adding to the table?
That's pretty much it. As far as food, those are the only twists there. But I was going to ask Rohi, since he's, I know you like to dabble into the stocks and the retail space,
Sure.
and we talk sometimes about credit cards, and I was thinking how do you guys play like in line with Black Friday, right? And being a consumer on retailer, do you guys play into the rewards? Because there's a lot of companies that offer rewards. Obviously, your credit card, I keep getting, a bunch of, emails saying 5 times the mileage, 10 times the mileage you shop here, right?
Yeah.
And so that seems to be a very good strategy on the retailer side, is working with the credit card companies, saying, hey, bring your carrier, your card holders this way, and we'll work something out on this back end. And that back end's usually, 10 times more miles, or whatever your rewards are, right? Have you guys noticed that?
Yeah, I mean, I like, because we do a lot of Amazon. I mean, getting their Amazon card alone is, you get that 5 times where you normally only maybe get like 1.5 or 2% on your card.
Yeah.
But it's hard because you talk to people that are, really, they've gotten programmed to be anti-credit card in a sense of like, oh, credit cards are bad and I
Right.
shouldn't be using them. And I try to remind them that, like, okay, I mean, if you're paying them off, you're getting 2% free money essentially at the end of the day. Or, your gas, you may, some of those other ones, you're getting bigger rewards. I mean, for us, I mean, with the business, it adds up quite a bit. I mean, we'll get a couple $100s a month of what I consider free money.
Right.
But you do see it. The only downside to that is what you see a lot of, and people don't understand is, every shop you go into, oh, you want to open a card with us, and oh yeah, get the rewards. Well, that's a hit on your credit. It's going to be on there because they had to do a credit request, and it's a hard request, and then they don't realize now, like they come to see you guys to buy that house. Well, why am I paying such a high percentage on my interest? Well, because look, you got 20 credit cards in this last month, and you're at high risk.
And I was going to switch gears on you guys only because, when it comes to, you mentioned credit cards, and here's one thing, right? So as inflation kind of is being tamed, and I'm not saying to record lows, but somewhat to 2019, right?
Yeah.
We saw this huge increase in inflation, record high. And now that we've kind of tamed it, the prices haven't gone down. Inflation may go down, but prices haven't gone down. And this Thanksgiving, obviously, our turkey's affordable now. Maybe back then you can buy a butterball or something for $15.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 25 now. So you may not see the increase that much when it comes to Thanksgiving because you're going to spend anyways. But now, moving forward and coming to the end of the year, before this new presidential administration takeover, you've been hearing about like the trade, the tariffs, and how that's going to impact what we as consumers, right? Because I mean, a lot of the stuff that is going to be a tax or tariff is going to be items that we currently import and we consume, right? So you're talking about your goods, electronics, vehicle parts, it's sort of all sort of things, coming from China, Mexico, and Canada. So does that have a concern as far as like, are people going to rush again? Are we going to have these supply chain issues now? Because people know that, hey, after this time, when the tariffs are imposed, everything else will go up the 20, 25%. Maybe a small increment, but it's still a lot more expensive, or I wouldn't say a lot more expensive, maybe more expensive than what you would get today. Do you see people rushing out to the stores and trying to take advantage of that?
It's we always want the change, right? But then we always want to grow, but then we fear the growing pain, right? And so what's the purpose of imposing those tariffs on China, for instance? And it's really to promote homegrown manufacturing, right? To let's shop here local. And we always want to say that, right? Support small businesses, and everybody will share that on their posts. But the minute a small business starts to try to develop something and say, hey, well, this is the cost, this is the cheapest I can provide it for, we throw our hands up and say, I ain't buying that. I'm going to Temu and I'm going to buy the really cheap item because it's just cheaper, right? And so we online shopping, all of that has kind of tied in and given us this kind of behavior where we're always looking for the cheapest product, right? But but which is it? Do we want to shop local? Do we want it American made? Do we want to support businesses? Do we want our economy to be based off of local manufacturing where we provide jobs and we're working that way? Well, if we do, then there has to be some growing pains, right? So that's kind of I guess I mean I'm a proponent of that as well. I say the same thing, and sometimes I fear the growing pains because I certainly feel that often, but that is the reality, right? If we want to grow or if we want to get to that next level, there has to be a pinch point, right?
Yeah, and You know, that's a good point. At the end of the day, is who is that pinching though? Is it pinching your average Joe, or is it pinching your more less disadvantaged, right? So, the example that I do is, for example, my wife and I go over this, and we have a discussion and arguments over this. Well, I shouldn't shop at Walmart because there is where they sweatshops and what have you. I mean, they've been known to have certain things that are probably not as ethical that we look at the U.S., but a lot of the stuff is imported from different. Their products are Taiwan, maybe China, and what have
Sure.
you. But I mean, they're in the business of making money, right?
Right.
And they're going to make it at whatever expense that they're going to take on, but they're not going to look at American manufacturing because that price would be outside of their, it would be very competitive, right? If you come in here, then I'm sorry, it wouldn't give you that competitive advantage.
Right.
So the reason why I like to shop at Walmart is because they have decent prices. I can still go in there, grab a bag of whatever I need, or accessories that I need, and I still find it to be fairly affordable. I mean, yeah, there may be a mom and pop shop here, but it's not convenient right now. That dollar needs to stretch out a little bit more. So people take that route instead because they see it as a way. If I'm a consumer, this is going to be cheaper for me, and it's going to be lasting. I can provide whatever meal or whatever product that I need for extended a period of life than I would through a different outlet.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's that's kind of the result of majority of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, right? You're just trying to get through this month. How do I survive this month? How do I survive these next 2 weeks, right? And when you're living with that thought, then you have to make decisions that are like that, right? And so there's always going to be a market for that. And I mean, you even and we're talking about retail. All these items are marked up crazily, right? They're being made for, pennies on the dollar, and we just try to find the person who just has it on sale, right? Now we're all trying to save money for sure.
I think you're going to see what we've seen in some of our other industries is that if that tariff goes into place, you'll think you're not buying from China anymore, but China's just going to funnel it through either Taiwan or one of these other countries that are not, with the sanctions or tariffs, but you'll still be buying it directly because you're not gonna be able to they're not gonna give up. They're not gonna say, hey, we have this like billions of dollars of manufacturing going on. Oh, now the United States isn't gonna buy from us anymore. They're just gonna make it still, put it on a ship, let it touch some other country, and then say, oh, you bought it from this country, not from us.
So do you think it's all a what do they call it when you have
Shell game?
A shell game?
What
Where,
is it?
and
Yeah.
I mean, politically, it resonates very well. Well, we're gonna
Correct.
tax China, we're gonna tax Mexico, we're gonna tax Canada. I'm the guy that's gonna do it, right? But at the end of the day, you're just moving parts around because that's what's been done with China's. Tariff that was imposed back in 2016 or 17 when Donald Trump came in, that also happened. There was a shifting of where the imports came from, maybe Indonesia, maybe Vietnam, whatever the case may be, but they were still getting the same product. It's just that now they weren't called China-made products, right? And what I fear is that essentially what will happen is that if you want to have and preach that local buy local, that means you have to manufacture it here. So, for example, in Mexico, if you're manufacturing auto parts, which they supply about 60% of the auto parts here in the United States, you would have to pay that person that's producing that part, let's say in California, a minimum wage of $20, whereas out there, I mean, we don't know. Let's just assume that it's probably $3 an hour. Right? Huge. That's a huge difference. And that's the difference of where you're going to give back the dividends to your investors or shareholders that buy your stock. How do you promise your shareholders your earnings that are going to be in a positive track, right?
Yeah.
When you're doing this, it's really hard. So I think a good example was Elon Musk, right? Why he left California and he settled where? In Texas. Right? No difference. I mean, it was getting expensive for him. So I mean, big corporations are looking for ways of where they can maximize profits with the least amount of money they pay.
But if you're trying to cut off China, what you have to understand is, especially like in your retail space where it comes to electronics or most of the stuff we probably have on this table, the issue that you have with the China model is that in the United States, I design this mic, I do all the engineering of it, and then I give them all the plans. And that one factory, they'll make them for me at a price, but then they're also going to their friend down the street and saying, hey, here's all the stuff for you to make it, right? And then what you do is, that's why when you go on Temu or AliExpress, you say, well, there's like 100 of the same exact mic, and this guy has it for $50, and this guy has it for 10. Well, it's because you want to sell for 50, and it only cost them like $2 to make it. It's exact copy. They have all the information.
Right.
They've said that if you cut China off and you did bring this U.S. manufacturing where they, I design this mic, I don't give them any information, I build it all in-house, they're not going to be able to copy it efficiently. They're not going to be able to take this mic, break it down, go figure out all the engineering that went into it to have a comparable product, or even the exact same product. That's how you would stop them. And that's exactly what's not happening. Is like I said, we do all the designing, all this stuff, Silicon Valley, and we design this board and the programming and everything, and then we ship it off to them. And they say, hey, can you build this for us? You gave them all the plans. They have everything to make this item, and there's nothing that stops them because we don't have any of these laws in place to protect your intellectual property rights. So yeah, somebody will come up with the exact same product, and they'll sell it just above their cost because now they're going to sell all of them. And you as the company suffer because you want to make your own profit that's much bigger than that, and they can compete with you.
Yeah, and every component of like an iPhone or some electronic, it's not all driven from one specific country.
Mm-hmm.
There may be components that come from multiple countries. An iPhone may
Who's
have
going to make it cheaper?
more than 10, right? So I think if the process of manufacturing these things is saying, hey, I'm going to have all the semiconductors here in Taiwan. I'm going to have these cameras built somewhere else and what have you. So at the end of the day, you have all these components that you don't necessarily share all your plans and your blueprint, but you come together and you built it at some place of some facility where a robot may take over.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I found interesting is that I went to a conference and I got earpods, the wireless earpods for free. They were giving them away. So I know that at one point, I mean, shoot, you're looking at $100, $200 for some really classic Apple earpods, right? And then I noticed that, hey, they're going down. They're $50 or $20. They're $15, down to where the electronic components to that are very cheap to make, that you can probably make them for, I don't know, maybe less than $1. So if you can capture $10, $15, I mean, that's a great business model. And you're seeing that with electronics.
1,500%.
Yeah.
You're seeing that with electronics. Even these 55-inch TVs now are going
Well, that's
for
what they
like,
say. The TV is the only thing that hasn't inflated, right? It's actually decreased. And I bought my first LCD TV. It was 42 inches, and I paid $900. This is back in 2008 or something like that. And that was the first TV I bought on my own. I was like super proud of myself. But yeah, it's the technology's. It's getting different there. So, but I think like that's my problem. I have a lot of problems with politics, obviously, but that's my biggest thing is we, as consumers of politicians, and we have to be very careful what's being said, right? Because things sound better than what they actually are all the time, right? And Trump is like a master exaggerator, right? He's a crowd pleaser. And you can see his energy just boost up the more his crowd's chanting, right? He's a prime example of that. He's a salesman. How many board meetings or how many company rallies has he probably been at and just pumping up his team, right? I mean, that's what he does. And so when you have somebody saying we're gonna cut off China, and China, he knows that the average Joe just is assuming, hey, China's taking all our jobs, right? He's planting this seed and just getting that feedback, right? But the reality is it's much more difficult than that, right? And you each alluded to different points of why it's a good thing, right? Restricting them from our technology, from what we're creating. But then also the reality of us just not being able to possibly compete with them and maintain our cost of goods if we manufacture in-house, right? So, sometimes us Americans, we're so naive where we think we want to say the right thing. We want to say we want to go green, right? But are we really going to be able to afford, probably $50 million at each school site for green grass. And by the way, that tab's going to have to come every 10 years because that stuff doesn't last longer than, 10 or 15 years. That's a big tab. Do we really want to be able to pay? Do we really want to pay, for these Post-its, $10? No, we want to pay, $1, right? And we want to put our logo on there. And so now it's going to be $5, right? But that they can do that real cheap when they're paying somebody, 50 cents an hour wages, right? Manufacturing auto parts in Mexico. It's just funny, like, we're so concerned about minimum wage here in California. We need it to be at $20. People can't live. They can't, provide for their families. They can't do this and that. But we're cool with Mexico paying $3. All right. Oh, well, they're Mexico. Oh, well, they're Mexican. That's how they live, right? Well, they're human. Why? Where's our sentiment when we're talking about people outside the U.S., right? It's not there. It's not existent. So at the end of the day, we want it cheap. We want people doing it for $1 an hour, right? And we prove that by the way we consume, the way we purchase, the way our spending habits are, the way we want pricing to be, right? So in our hearts, if we really sit here and think about it, we know that that's bad, but the reality is unfortunately we need those costs to stay that low. Otherwise, man, we saw what happened with the inflation being at as high as it was over the last couple of years. It put the economy into a frenzy. Can you imagine it being double or triple that? It would really throw
and
things
it
off the
could
rails.
very well so here in the future, because even these aggressive policies can create a high inflation, and it would require more quantitative easing, or at least more money being dropped into the supply. I mean, the aggressive cuts, obviously, with Social Security and Medicare and this Department of Government Efficiency, we're yet to see how that's going to impact your everyday American, right? I mean, because right now it feels good. It's a chant. And, I'm driven by impulse and this motivation that we're going to do a lot better.
Yeah.
That we're going to do so much better. But sometimes you fail to realize that maybe we reached a peak already. Maybe we reached a peak where America was at its highest in a certain year, right? Where that quality of life was like, you know what? Oh my God. Why? Because I hear it all the time. Why can't we be like we were 30, 40 years ago? And people fail to realize is if you go back and look at the history of how our economic policies were back then, a little different than they are today.
Yeah.
And it's very, very, very real that I think people don't really understand that we may have hit a plateau where we're now in a decline. And that's unfortunate, but America's not made to be forever. Right? And no other empire has really withstand certain economic policies that take place. So I'm not driving fear. I'm just trying to be realistic. And what history has taught us is if you go back, you look at it. And these policies, aggressive as they are, is to try to keep us in a, we got to close our doors. We got to close our borders. We got to work on ourselves now, which is great. We should. But there's still a lot of money being exported in different types of military bases. We help a lot of countries. We're part of NATO. There's a lot of stuff that we pull out there. If we utilize, and we're doing it to secure, again, the financial interests of certain Americans, right?
Yeah.
It's not the American people. It's the corporations that really have a lot of this interest. And I'll give you an example of where I was trying to lead with this. But in the 1930s, and again, people can correct me if I'm wrong, but in the 1930s there was a policy to against the marijuana, right? There was farmers that grew hemp. Marijuana wasn't the term called; it was cannabis. So throughout that period of time, cannabis or the hemp was utilized for many different raw materials, right? It was used for paper, soaps, ropes, and what have you. Hemp was very widely used in American farming. But here comes a group of people that want to utilize a different source of material. Well, here comes wood, right? Wood is now, you can make paper out of wood, right? There's certain shavings and what have you. So hemp was a weed that you can grow. It doesn't really require a lot. But when you have a scarce product, you can create that into a consumable good that's scarce, and you can inflate the price. No different than cobalt for batteries, for energy. So all this energy stuff that we're talking about, it's not new. It's been done repeatedly over through history, and we've seen it that if somebody owns an interest of a certain raw material and you can incorporate it into the politics to say we need to go this route because if we don't, the world's going to end. Or we're going to, then it's easy for you to tell the consumer and make these policies that, yes, we have to electrify. We have to build the infrastructure. Although it's going to cost you a lot more in the long run, no different than back then. So that marijuana tax act that took place somewhere in the 1930s, it avoided farmers from going and developing more hemp because it was costly to them, right? DuPont, no different. Now today, we're wearing everything polyester. Well, I'm kind of wondering who developed that structure of developing these fine oils into into textures, into like stuff that we wear. Again, goes back to who has the interest in trying to come up and where are you trying to get this? They're cheap. $3-4 now for any polyester shirt.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Well, so you talk about the materials, and then it goes hand in hand with the labor cost, right? And so historically, not saying anything good or bad about the unions, but unions have always had strong political associations, and have been influenced between anywhere from your federal government to your mafia, and everybody has had a hand in there because if you can dictate things like prevailing wages and how much your unions are being making, there's a lot of money to be made, right? You win that government contract, geez, all of a sudden your life has changed, right? But those are the growing pains that we're talking about, though. If we wanted to do everything in house, you have to be prepared for some serious growing pains. I see these memes all the time where it's like roads today, right? And you'll see like this road with potholes and all busted up and real cheap, maybe 3 inches worth of material. Before you see dirt, and they'll say like roads, built in Roman times, right? And they're still there, nice brick paved roads. Well, it's like, okay, but who built those, right? You probably had slave labor, working for nothing, and so you had it was more affordable. You could take your time and build out these roads for that, but that's not our reality. We don't want anybody working for free, and we certainly don't want anybody working for a wage that's not fair, right? But in exchange for that, we have cost, and so we have to do things the cheapest way that we can so that we can spread our buck, right? And then we have to, implement measures like Measure T to collect tax dollars and try to keep up with the maintenance required for these things, right? So, you got your material costs and you got your labor costs, and, power of influence on these politicians is pretty deep, right? Who gets those contracts?
But you say we don't want slaves, but that's what's coming around the corner with these robots and this AI is exactly what you just said. Is I want to have an army that they don't collect a wage, they'll work as much as I want them to, they won't complain. That's really what we're moving towards, and even as us as people want that same idea. We want somebody who's going to be subservient to me. I want that robot that's in my house, that's cleaning my house and cleaning my room and making me dinner. We all want that.
Yeah.
I know we want to disagree because there's that human aspect. I don't want a human doing that, but
right.
That's what we're moving towards.
I would say, just because the robot doesn't have, eyes and 2 arms and 2 legs. I mean, we've been using robots and AI.
This is my robot right now. I can't walk, but it's my slave.
Absolutely. And manufacturing. I mean, it's all ran by robots. You have your machine operators, of course, but I mean, we've been there. But yeah, it's certainly. You certainly see it starting to move for the everyday person, right? Substituting, tasks that were, deemed, simple tasks or simple jobs, right? McDonald's going to an automated system, right? And we as people, we sit back and say, wait a minute, you're taking our jobs, you're taking our opportunity. Well, I've heard Rohit say this many times, they weren't meant to be a full-time job. You weren't meant to do that job for the rest of your life, You have to learn something. You have to learn a skill. You have to learn, how to adapt and continue to move on.
And I think McDonald's caught on to that, and that this is probably why they're transitioning to something like that, because there's training involved in McDonald's. You don't just go out there and try to throw the fries in there without a proper training. There's a way of making those fries. There's a way of making those burgers that has a process, an assembly. And I think they spend time in trying to give you the training to try to keep you there as long as they can. They're not there to just turn over people.
Right.
Hey, come in here, let me go and train you, spend some money on you, and then you exit my workforce. Their intentions are to try to give you the training, provide you the whatever you need in order to become very effective employee, but at the same time pay you the least amount they can, because at the end of the day, it could dip into their profitability, right? So they figured out, well, it's going to be hard to train these people and keep them when in today's modern day, they don't want to work. So I have to invest in something that's going to be more effective, where I don't need to worry about liability, workers' comp, and all the things that you shared. But I mean, where does that leave us? Because essentially, you'll see that in military, you'll see that probably in policing. I mean, not anytime soon, but what happens to the social aspect of being a community? Where does that come into play?
But that's the shrinking of what you're going to see is the easily replaceable, like, and what you're seeing is that, like you take McDonald's, the cost of McDonald's has increased, right? The cost of that hamburger that I'm paying is going up. At some point, the consumer can't keep doing that. I can't pay $50 for a hamburger, but if that's what it's costing McDonald's because of this human workforce, that's when, as it gets to that point and they say, hey, sales are slipping, they're going to have that transition and say, okay, well, to cut costs, you're getting fired and you're getting replaced with a robot. And you're going to see that slow transition to where at some point there won't be any human there. Maybe the guy like sweeping the floor or cleaning the toilets, because it may be a harder job to replace with a robot. But the more they have to keep that cost at a certain point, and that's why California, they've seen that, and they were trying to implement these tax laws that says, just because if I replace him with a robot, you're almost going to have to still get taxed the same to keep it competitive. Well, if it's about cost, don't make it competitive for me to replace Abel with a robot. Allow me to go fully automated. But they don't want that, because they know, again, that now you're going to shrink the job market. Now all these people that were used to working this
gonna
job,
draw from,
now I only need one person. I don't need 15 of you anymore.
and most of those people will draw.
Well, we saw
unemployment.
that right away with this last wage increase in California, where a lot of the, Domino's or Pizza Hut was one for sure. Pizza Hut dropped all their delivery drivers. Yeah, said we're not delivering. Pick it up. And obviously they have some people that are very smart and can run the numbers, run the data, and say, well, you know what, we can be equal to or more efficient or profitable if we just don't have it at all, right? We don't offer that service, and we'll still be okay. The money we're saving will offset the money we're losing, and people will just create new habits. And it reminds me of the Jetsons, right? You used to throw a little pill out, and then in the microwave, whatever, and boom, a whole meal would pop up. Do we drive chains like McDonald's to where they can just from a factory send you out a packaged meal and give you some cooking instructions as far as like heating it up, right? And boom, you have a whole meal right there, right? I mean, if they could do that, and then you can go back to getting $1 McChicken, right? We talk about necessity, people making purchases based off of necessity, not necessarily the luxury side of it, because we have to survive. My check don't come till next week. I got to eat. I can go online. McDonald's has a factory. I can get this shipped over to me, get 10 meals delivered for $15, and I can cook them up, heat them up whenever I want, and they taste pretty good, right? And it's food, right? But then you have tug of war, right? Because then you have the other side that says, well, how many preservatives are in that? How unhealthy is that?
How come that hasn't decomposed? It's sitting there for a whole year.
Yeah, but it's because we're forcing these businesses, we're forcing people, including businesses, to make decisions based off of, profitability, right? Because we're all in it. Anytime a business is open, it's for profitability. We're not doing it for free, right? I think I guess you could only argue, I don't want to go there. But there's not very many businesses that say, hey, look, we're not going to make a profit. We're just doing this for the greater good of people, right? Certainly not McDonald's saying that. But these decisions are made based off, all the decisions that we make as far as wage increases, these tariffs, there are repercussions to them, and there is give and take. We do have to consider business decisions that are made at these boards, at these corporations that affect us all.
And I think you'll come up with the acronym DOPE. Department of Private Efficiency, right? And I think you've had that already in place, and I think that's where you want to transition to the Department of Governments, right? Now we have government. There's a lot of inefficiencies, and this is where Elon Musk is coming through that. So anyhow, last comments before we wrap this up. Again, happy Thanksgiving. If you guys are watching us for the first time, feel free to chime in. We're always looking for your comments, feedback, shares. Let us know what other topics you'd like us to discuss. We try to keep it local, but sometimes we cross over to the national and international. We're now international, by the way. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes we keep it local or loco.
That's right. That's right. But anyhow, with that, anything you want to say for the Thanksgiving holidays?
No,
before
just
we
get
break?
out there, shop, keep this thing going.
There you go. Roy says get out there and shop till you drop.
Buy guns and ammo at
There you go.
store here on Howard.
There we go.
I forgot the name of it. Was
Zach's.
It's Zach. Okay,
Zach's.
just Zach.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Eat up tomorrow. Enjoy the family, and do some physical activity on Friday.
All right. So with that, we'll go ahead and end the show.